The U.S. Vice President says Washington will continue to pressure Tehran. JD Vance insists that the U.S. is trying to see if Iran is willing to make a deal.
We've destroyed their nuclear program. We've destroyed their conventional military. We've radically reduced their, what you might call their asymmetric military abilities. And right now we're trying to see if they're willing to make the kind of long-term changes that would be necessary to have a better relationship with the United States. And if not, that's fine too. We're just going to keep on applying the pressure that we can apply and getting as much oil and gas out of the Middle East.
And joining me here in the studio is Abbas Aslani. He is a senior research fellow at the Tehran-based Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. And joining us from Washington, D.C. is Richard Weitz, a senior fellow at the NATO Defense College. Thank you to the both of you for joining us on this evening here on Al Jazeera. Abbas Aslani, I want to start with you. There's been yet another attack on a vessel in the Strait, this time a UAE vessel. JD Vance says he's now seeking a commitment from Iran that it's not going to keep on firing on vessels. But, you know, how is the U.S. going to be able to trust Iran that it won't do just that, keep on firing on vessels in the Strait?
Pera, I think it's quite clear that, we are at the time of a conflict. There has been no ceasefire announced so far by the two sides, but they're engaged in a diplomatic track in order to revive the memorandum of understanding. And more importantly, now they are focused on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. In the parallel that Iran and Oman are holding technical talks in order to have a deal on that. They are also supposed to engage in discussions with the United States in order to somehow revive the MOU, which can result in the reopening the strait. So by the time that takes place and the waterway reopens based on new arrangements, so Iran expects the other side that they somehow, the vessels can move in the coordinated corridor in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's not forget that the United States has also adopted a naval blockade in the region. So it seems from Iranian perspective that the U.S. wants to somehow force those vessels in order to transit in an uncoordinated corridor, which is not acceptable for the Iranian side. So by the time that there is no new, let's say, agreement on the terms of the Article 5 of the MOU, so that will be the case. So the question from Iranian side is that why the U.S. is pushing those vessels to transit in those areas, whether they are trying to provoke a reaction from the Iranian side. But the point is that, by the time that we have no deal in place to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, that will be the case.
Richard Weitz, I want to ask you, this lack of trust that we're talking about here, how do you think that would translate into nuclear negotiations if, in fact, they ever get to that point?
It's a long-standing problem, but it is surmountable. I'm not one who puts a lot of faith in each side trusting each other. In fact, we wouldn't have these negotiations if they fully trusted each other. So the key would be to have a very, unlike the memorandum of agreement, to have very specific terms, detail what each party will do, when they'll do it, how to do it. Also, to establish an action plan that would allow each side to ensure that they're making progress towards the end goal, have a mechanism to enforce the agreement, and also to have a commission or some other body where the two sides and any other participants can meet, clarify when they think the other is deviating from the execution of the agreed framework, and then resolve those issues before they reach a political or military level, a higher political military level. So it is doable, but the challenge is, as you know, is we've basically not been able to address that issue because the focus has all been on the Strait and other immediate issues.
Yeah. Abbas Aslani, today there was a list published by Iran, 6 demands that they're placing on the U.S. One of them is for the U.S. to pay compensation to Iran for damages from the war. I mean, is that a realistic demand? Does Abbas Araghchi really think that Donald Trump is going to pay Iran for damages from the war?
The majority of those demands are, have been mentioned in the framework of the Memorandum of Understanding. What the word we today heard, which somehow seemed new to us, was the compensation or reparations to the recent, military operation by the United States. The point is that, we have been seeing a cycle being repeated several times. Iran wants to put an end to that. And the way that they think that they can do it is by inflicting costs on the United States. And what is Iran tabling at the moment is the invoice for the recent American aggression and invasions against the country. So that's why they want to say that the era that you can come and attack us and go is over. And so that's why they want to say that you need to pay the cost in order to push you to rethink the next time that you want to do the same thing. So for Iran, it's important that if they reach any agreement with Oman, which could be a prelude to reviving the MOU, that is going to be a durable one, not a temporary pause, and not just a deal on the paper. So that's why they are somehow trying to put pressure on the U.S. through these demands.
And they're saying that they're now very close to reaching an agreement. Richard Weitz, if Iran and Oman are in fact very close to that agreement, as we've been hearing, wouldn't it be a good time now for the U.S. to actually pull back from this issue and let Iran and Oman deal with this?
The Oman and Iran are key participants in any process for resolution of the Straits, but it can't really be decided only by them or only by Iran and the U.S. It's got to involve more of the stakeholders, the other GCC states, those countries that rely heavily on transit, such as the large Asian economies and the Europeans. So I think the U.S. has been supportive of the Iran-Oman dialogue, and Omanis have been consulting with the U.S. and the other GCC states. But it's only part of the solution, and the Iranian government itself acknowledges that whatever these two countries decide, it wouldn't reopen the Straits unless the U.S. removes its counter-blockade and other steps are taken. So it's a part of the puzzle, but it's not the whole solution.
Abbas Aslani, according to Donald Trump, the U.S. has decimated Iran's Navy, Air Force. He's killed the top Iranian leadership. Iran's economy is taking a severe toll. There have been mass protests in the country. And then on the flip side, you've got the releasing of the frozen assets, the removing of the sanctions, the possibility of a $300 billion private investment fund for Iran. With all these things on the table, wouldn't that be reason enough now to pull back from the aggression and then just get back to the negotiating table and get this final deal done once and for all?
First and foremost, this was imposed against the country, the war. So the country had no alternative but to stand and engage in self-defense. But yes, this has been creating damages and bringing damages to the country. The country has been under economic, suffering and pressure. But the point is that we are seeing also contradictions from the American side. On the one side, the U.S. president is talking about massive attacks. He's shifting toward diplomacy, then shifting back to pressure and threats. And this has created a sense of unpredictability, uncertainty in the atmosphere. So there is a serious question in Tehran that whether the United States wants to engage in diplomacy or not. Also, the U.S. is saying that they have destroyed Iran's nuclear program. In the meantime, they're saying that they want to have a nuclear deal with Iran in order to make sure that its nuclear program is peaceful. They are saying also they have been able to destroy Iran's military capabilities, but in the meantime, Iran is able yet to control the Strait of Hormuz. And U.S. President recently, after Iranian attack against U.S. forces in Jordan, said that they were surprised. So Iran's military capability, despite the damages, is yet there. It seems that there is, strategic, uncertainty in the United States. It's swinging back and forth by the U.S. president in the case that they didn't have a clear strategy to start the war, they aim to continue it, and they do not know how to end it. So that's why we're seeing those contradictions. For Iran, the priority is a diplomatic off-ramp. They wanted to do it. But what the U.S. is doing is somehow feeling that hesitation in Tehran toward U.S. intentions. So that, but yet We are seeing Iran negotiating with Omanis. They are very close to an agreement. And this could be somehow necessary, but will not suffice to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because Iran did not close the strait because of this agreement with Oman. It was the U.S. actions and, let's say, naval blockade, attacks, and violating some terms of the MOU that pushed Tehran toward the closure of the strait. And if they are able to somehow diplomatically address those issues, I think they can be back to the diplomatic track as they were. For Iran, it's important to change, this situation, those security concerns and threat, into economic benefits, and to address the situation in the country as well.
I'm afraid our time is up. Thank you so much, Abbas Aslani, here in the studio, and also Richard Weitz joining us from Washington, D.C.